So we've got 4 down. We've been guaranteed to piss off some fans of different artists, and I look forward to them making counter arguments to us, which is part of the fun of this podcast. Let's see. I think an album that was designed to piss us off. Public Image Limited, Metal Box, 2nd edition. Matt, run the numbers, and you are the first take, followed by me, then Josh.
Yeah, so Public Image. So just to clarify, this is Metal Box, but on the Spotify, it's second. Does anybody have any background on that?
They do. I do.
Josh does. Okay, good.
They re-released it at some point, and they named it. Yes, it was originally released as 3 untitled 45 RPM 12-inch records in a metal box, and then it was later reissued in more conventional packaging as a double LP 2nd edition.
Oh, okay.
They renamed it.
Was it for the US and the UK markets, or was it for the same market, just done the same way twice?
Unknown. Let me read a bit more.
I bet you it might be for US UK, because I know the Clash were, doing that, and certainly back in the day, you had the Beatles and the Stones, and you had the UK and the US versions. I wonder.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't say. This was from Wikipedia, by the way.
Well, while Josh is looking that up, Matt can finish
I'll read the number. I'll do the number. So whatever you want to call this, Metal Box, 2nd edition, whatever. It's 168 in the 1970s on Best Ever Albums, making this the highest ranked album that we are covering tonight from Best Ever Albums. It was number 13 in 1979, number 717 of all time. It's their highest rated album on Best Ever Albums. It did not make Rolling Stone's list, and I think this is a 1001 album. I need to hear it before I die. Okay. Yep. All right. So my first take on this is, because this is Johnny Lydon's band after the Sex Pistols, and I believe he changed his name. He went to Johnny Rotten. Now he's Johnny Lydon again, back for this record, if I'm not mistaken. And I was very much surprised, because I was not expecting this album to sound like this. I thought it was going to sound more of a punk, Sex Pistols kind of sound, and it's definitely not that. Definitely the number one thing that stands out to me here is the bass. The bass is definitely the prominent instrument here, and in some of these tracks, it sounds like, it's particularly at the beginning, like Memories and Swan Lake. It sounds like this is almost like dance music, with the upbeat nature of it, and the pace. It's just like I wouldn't necessarily say it's I don't know, maybe it is a dance song, but it definitely has a dance kind of feel to it. So I was surprised by that, finding that interesting. There's a number of songs on here that are just instrumentals, and it sounds like there's a keyboard thing going on that is, it's a little harsh. It's a little, it's high pitched. It's whatever the effect that they're doing on it. It's not like it challenges you a little bit. It's a little bit on the harsh side, I would say, for some of the keyboard stuff. I think I like this album better in the first half. I think that the strength of the songs are better. In the latter half, you're getting songs like The Suit and Bad what is it, Chant, that song. That Chant is probably my least favorite on here. It's just Lydon's vocals get a little wearying, because he's a very kind of whiny, he's not necessarily yelling, but he's definitely not. He's not. His voice is not carrying a tune all that well, and it's a little abrasive at times. So kind of towards the end of the album, I'm definitely ready for it to be over. This definitely falls into it's a little too long. It's being a little just over an hour long. So I would say that this probably could deal with some editing, some cutting back, but there are definitely songs on here that I did like and found very interesting. And some of it seemed like it was like stuff that might have been on the cutting room floor, that almost like some of the stuff were demos, because some of the production is pretty lo-fi, and, it's not, the sound of the music sounds like they're kind of just goofing around in the studio, figuring things out. And so, I'm interested to know if that was if that's actually what was happening, or if that was their intent, because it definitely sounds like a raw or kind of rougher version of songs, maybe some that were unfinished. So, I would say overall I liked it, and but there's definitely some edits I would make. and just definitely surprised that this is the guy that did the Sex Pistols. If you bought this album being a big Sex Pistols fan and thinking you were going to get version 2.0, that's not what you're getting here. And at just the bass, the prominent nature of the bass throughout this record really stood out. So I'm going to be thumbs up on this. I didn't love it. I think that there are elements in here that could have gotten me to that point, but there are too many flaws I think I saw for me to not really go to that level. But overall, I'm still a thumbs up.
Yeah, I deeply dislike this album. Deeply dislike this
Same.
album.
Wow. I'll just say that.
And
Wow.
I am not even sure that this is. I'm not even sure that Johnny Lydon didn't create this album and his bandmates to deeply get people like me to deeply dislike this. And I think I am not a guy that always struggles with challenging music. There's certain stuff that I didn't love, right? But this album was, and let me start by saying it's not because it's not an artistic piece, right? Or there's no talent and stuff like that. This was like an assault on my ears that just battered me. Like the intensity, Matt, that you felt about that pop group album that I did not feel because their piece. I just felt that this album was a long fight for me against it. And I listened to it twice because the first time around I thought that maybe I'd shut down on the album and had closed off avenues to explore it. So I said, all right, listen, I'm going to give it a couple days and I'm going to re-engage with it, right? Because I don't like the idea that I shut doors on the album. And boy, the second time I got to it, it did not grow on me more. If anything, it felt almost more offensive to my ears the second time because I was prepared for what was coming and I still could not engage with it. I found Johnny Lydon's voice, it just, within the context of the Sex Pistols, it really does work. Here, I guess I have to just credit it to the type of music that was with it. It just really it really came at me in a way that I did not find either enjoyable or inviting in like a provocative way. It was more like in a go away type of provocative. It definitely felt very avant-garde art rock to me in terms of choices they made stylistically. Once again, that for me is not normally a bad thing. I just felt that the overall tone of this album was confrontational, and I don't feel like it was there. Lyrical content wise, it seemed like a lot of Johnny Lydon stuff. It was observational at British society and sort of hypocritical ideas, which was fine. I mean, the lyrics themselves in no way were trite or turned me off. It just sort of, it kind of sounded like, that he had a theme like pop tones, and then he kind of go into it and give stream of conscious, like almost like slam, like not slam poetry, but you get what I'm saying. Like almost like Henry Rollins-y type observational commentary over stuff. But unlike Black Flag or stuff like that, where what Rollins is doing in the musical palette, I can sort of latch on to with like a defiance and an anger. You kind of get in that lane and I can wear it. This, I never was able to wear it, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it. But this was the hardest one for me to do a review for because I'm usually pretty good at being able to describe why something is difficult for me. This one kind of went into that sensory element where there was a factor that I'm still struggling with a little bit of why this particular album. There's only been a couple other times where there was like White Light, White Heat hit me this way. Trout Mask Replica hit me this way. Which of the Krautrock? There was one of the Krautrock albums that not at this level because it had turned off, but there was one of the Krautrock albums. It was one of the earlier, not Tago Mago or Egebemasi, the third Can album we covered that I apologize I'm missing right now. I'll look it up though. But there was the most avant-garde one. But even that's what I would compare this to in terms of how it was like that White Light, White Heat thing, where it was like this is like a 12-round fight for me listening to this album. That's how I felt at times, and I actively wanted it to be done, which is a rare thing for me. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this album is a big fuck you to the listener, in my opinion. It and maybe Matt did say something. Maybe I was expecting, because it was Johnny Lydon and the Sex Pistols, I was expecting it to be like his version of a punk album or something, and instead he went in like a completely different direction, in a direction I didn't like or enjoy. It felt the whole album felt cold. It felt kind of repressive, and it felt like I was being held underwater and then having to listen to music underwater or something. There was really no, it doesn't even vary sonically from much to much. It just reminds me, and his singing is part of the issue I had with the album. It's just very grating and felt like just almost like dull intentionally in some way. It really does, and I'm kind of surprised about how well received this album was. I saw, looking up the metal packaging change, I saw the reception of this when it came out, and people really seemed to like it, critically at least. And I just don't get it. It sonically, it was not like interesting. I would rather listen to White Light, White Heat all day, every day, compared to this album. In fact, I'd rather listen to probably the other two albums that were more challenging this week than this album.
I definitely would. Those other two albums ahead of this, for sure. For me personally, yeah.
Whatever this album did, it's kind of like the anti-Josh album in some aspect. It really did nothing for me. In fact, I actually had to like end songs early because I was just getting so annoyed by it and did not enjoy it. It's I guess it's working if it's eliciting that emotional reaction in me, but it's not what I want. It's experimental too, which kind of I wasn't expecting also.
Yeah.
But experimental in like an uninteresting way, I suppose. So yeah, this album did nothing for me.
Yeah, I heard it the same way as you. Now, I was not expecting Sex Pistols Redux, because I know enough about Public Image Limited to know that every one of their albums sounds completely different, and each one. So I just was like, I'm not sure which version of Public Image Limited I'm getting, because each one, can range from pop music to new wave to experiment. So I was like, I wonder which version of Johnny Lydon's, bending of genres I'm going to get here, right?
Yeah.
And I quickly realized, okay, this is like a harsh sort of, and we keep saying, and for those that may be listening on YouTube, because we put these up as individual albums, right? The other albums we're talking about as being challenging this week were Throbbing Gristle and This Heat, right? And we'd mentioned on both of them, like, we're beginning to see here elements of the burgeoning industrial music. We've also mentioned that Joy Division is coming, which is another piece of that puzzle. But this is the only one by quite a bit where it took on that element of industrial music that at times just pummels you, which doesn't always break. It doesn't break me in the way this did. There was just an added element, like Josh mentioned, that was just daring me to break my rule about not fully engaging. And like I said, I truly did. I gave this a second listen because I'm like, I'm not going to let this album break me. But I'd be lying if I said this wasn't the album that most said to me, you're going to lose this fight, John. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't. Wow, I'm surprised. I mean, I hear all the things that you're saying, and I can't disagree with a lot of the adjectives that you guys have used.
No, I want you to be the counter, Matt.
But I didn't. But I didn't find this as. I mean, yes, cold is a good word, and it does. I wouldn't say that there's a ton of variation. Again, the bass stands out, right? That there's a lot of driving bass and the drums kind of doing that. But so there's that beat going throughout a lot of these songs. I would agree that Lydon's voice, particularly by the end, and I think that it did wear on me a little bit. I probably liked the first 7 songs I found pretty decent. And then you started getting The Suit and the Bad Baby, No Birds Chant, those kind, and Radio 4, the last track. That's kind of just that's I don't even know if that's really a song. It's just kind of like keyboards playing. It's one of those instrumentals, which is fine. It would take it or leave it, really. So I think Lydon's voice, like I said, does wear on you, right? But when I listen to the first half of the record, I don't know. There's enough there that's keeping me going and interesting, and I don't mind the discordant guitar parts, and I think the bass is really. I like the bass part. I like the upbeat nature of that, and even though a song like Albatross it opens with a 10.5 minute song, and
right.
That's probably a bit much, and his voice is kind of like he's really droning on the albatross.
And that's what I was trying to figure out. Like, is he like saying this album's going to be an albatross to you, just putting it right out there, or
yeah, but I don't know. I all that stuff being said, I still kind of like some of the stuff that they were doing. I wasn't in love with it, but I thought I think I was taken aback by how different it was, and then I was like, ooh, it's very different, and I kind of like what they're doing, and so I didn't find it nearly as offensive as you guys. I mean, definitely there was some, like Chant, that was offensive to me. That song was definitely not necessary. And The Suit, those are probably the two that stood out the most as being like, ugh. But 2 songs out of 12, doesn't totally turn me off from the record. I thought Socialist in the Graveyard, those instrumentals, I thought that those were kind of cool. I don't know. I just agree to disagree, but I do understand what you're saying, and I understand how this could be, a slog for some people to get through, or just repetitive, and just not inviting, because it is that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to turn away from it. I guess so.
No, and I once again I want to hear more from people. I'll be dead honest with you. There is a really good shot that this will end up with however many albums we cover. If it's 298, there's a really good shot that this may end up 298 in the decade for me.
Oh man, John, does this rival Trout Mask Replica? Is this like
it's the Trout Mask replica of the
70s?
Of the 70s for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's some people that would love that. They would be like, "Oh man, I have to listen to that record." So
and normally I'd be worried about offending fans, and I like I said, I'm not trying to troll or say my opinion is here, but I would feel worse if I was not under the belief, knowing who John Lydon is and the fact he genre shifts and stuff, that there wouldn't be a part of him that would appreciate the equivalent of a middle finger review, because to some degree, I feel like this album is a middle finger for Josh and I, to some degree. I do. I feel like it's that he just tapped into something that I think is designed to, evoke a visceral reaction, which there's something to be said for that. And it did for me. Yeah.
Is this like the first thing he did after the Sex Pistols?
Yes.
Okay.
And later, by the way, he did pop albums. He did dance, like Public Image Limited became a dance band and a pop band and a prog rock. But I think once again, and here's where he's similar to like Throbbing Gristle and other bands we talked about, he viewed himself as, I mean, he said many times, John Lydon, that like the Sex Pistols were kind of an accident for him. Like all of his influences were the type of challenging music that this sounds more like, right? All avant-garde stuff. That's what he was interested in at the entire time. So I almost feel like this sort of represents more of what he actually is, because kind of like John Lydon, he's a provocateur. Like his whole persona is provocative, right? Even he's been in the news around here, right? Because he moved to the United States because he loved Barack Obama, and then he was outspoken against Trump, and then he was pro-Trump, and then he was but I mean, it makes sense when you think, because like it's like when you're a natural provocateur, right? You go to where the angle that's the least what people expect of you, right? And just like it's just, there's all kinds of stuff he's made on some things he's made very what would be considered to be like socially liberal commentaries, only to I think, almost go out of his way to be against something that is in that lane as well, just to kind of keep people off balance. And I think, genre-wise in his music, that's part of what it is too. It's like, all right, I made this really challenging album that, didn't have any of the accessibility of the Sex Pistols, maybe drove off some of those guys. All right, now let's make a dance album.
Yeah.
So that all the people who were finding it from that angle of complexity, I can give them the middle finger. And so from that end of things, I don't feel bad giving my honest opinion, because I would expect John Lydon to, expect nothing less from me. So,
Well,
yeah.
And getting my final thought is getting back to that packaging question or the re-release of the name. So apparently the packaging itself upon release was also difficult to get the records out, and they were difficult to remove, and they were prone to being damaged when they removed. And then they re-released it both for the UK and the US in the double LP in a more conventional record format, and probably to make it easier for people to listen to, at least.
Gotcha. So it was not specifically for one of the markets. It was more just a joke. Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
What answers that question?
So curio, probably collector's item now if you have the original packaging and format, but yeah.
Yeah, that would be one to keep. So